when the Germanic tribes clashed with the tribes, or not the tribes, but the outposts, the legions, the armies of the Roman Empire, that some of those Germanic tribes were forced to adopt Christianity. Some of those Germanic tribes were forced to suppress their polytheistic faith. And as a response, some of them took the antagonist in the Christian faith, and they placed him right there next to their own pantheon of gods. So Satan was adopted into the pantheon of Germanic polytheistic gods. They sat him right next to them in the basement where they were forced to to worship in private. And part of that story, you could say, the lived memory and the DNA of the European settlers that would eventually settle here in America understood the danger of forcing people to suppress their faith, no matter how deviant or divergent it may seem to the mainstream faith community. Yes, we're Christians, but we don't want the satanic temple not to be able to practice their faith freely, which is how the satanic temple is now becoming somewhat of a semi-popular thing amongst the liberals and then really the anti-Christians. Go figure. Um, but we understand that suppression of freedom of faith and freedom of speech, freedom of religious practice becomes a danger that people start to resent. And then before you know it, from a metaphysical and spiritual sense, you've now recruited people to Satan's cause for him, just through your own sense of aggrandizement and fiat. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't allow people to be in the satanic temple. I'm not saying that we should outlaw the satanic temple. I'm not saying that we should make Satanism punishable by death or even jail time. Let people worship Satan if they want to. Fine, fine. I don't think it's a good idea personally, but you're an American citizen. You get to walk that path on your own. But what I'm going to ask is, how do we how do we think people who worship those type of religions, how do we think they're fit for leadership? That's different. Those are two totally different questions. Do you have the right? And this is why I point out on my social media all the time. I did it again this week, and I saw a guy who jumped from like the fourth story on a building. It was snowing. There was snow. There was a snow cover on the ground, and he jumped from like the fourth story, and there was a looked like they had constructed a big snow pile, and I guess they were just trying to see how maybe there's a Guinness Book of World Records of how far you could jump with, and land successfully without being injured or something strange like that. These are other things that make me think that some people aren't even real people, but maybe I'm just too rigid in my worldview. Maybe jumping, trying to experiment on how far you could jump from a fucking building is valuable. Anyway, I saw a video and he jumped from like the fourth story and he hit the snow pile and he seemed to be okay. I mean, he sprung up and he gave the thumbs up and they cheered. Yes, yeah. Like it was some huge accomplishment, some huge physical feat. Uh, and I just thought to myself, fine. Now in that case, I actually think that should probably be illegal. I mean, in endangering yourself with that sort of blatant at that with that type of blatancy is kind of, I mean, you're pushing the line, right? I mean, where does that end? And that's what I said on social media. Where does that end? I mean, how high up are you gonna go? I don't get it. And isn't there like a threshold then? Like let's say at four stories. I can successfully jump into a pile of snow and not be injured. Okay. Once I reach 5 stories, whatever that limit is, let's say I set that record. Let's say I set that limit. Doesn't the physical human anatomy kind of bind everybody to that threshold? Meaning, I mean, how many more people need to do it or need to raise it to realize that everybody at 6 stories is going to break their fucking back? Not many, right? I mean, so what the whole pursuit of it is kind of strange to me. I don't these are people who didn't really play any real sports. And they don't understand that records, achievement, physical achievement is set by a margin that's so small, and it usually has to do with skill and talent and discipline and rigor. It's not something you just stumble into. But again, when you have an internet where everybody's the star in their own little reality sitcom, their own little reality show, everybody's living in their own little fantasy. I guess everybody thinks they can become relevant or you know historic by whatever means necessary, any means necessary. I start to wonder, is like, remember they used to have these disclaimers on TV that say like, these are trained professionals, don't try this at home. How is it that my podcast about January 6th always has a little content disclaimer underneath here on YouTube, but people can jump from fucking the tops of buildings or go parachuting with no parachute or I don't know, jump from one skyscraper to the next skyscraper, whatever. All this dangerous, high risk behavior, and there's no disclaimer whatsoever. Is anybody starting to wonder what's going on here? I am. I am. I mean, this may seem like a tangent, but my point is, it all goes back to what I'm saying about Nikki Haley is who's voting for. At least Barack Obama was good at speaking. At least his act was polished. At least he gave that kind of run of the mill Manchurian candidate kind of vibe. There's nothing authentic about Nikki Haley. There's nothing sort of perfectly inauthentic about Nikki Haley. But maybe some of us like that. Maybe some of us think that's actually what this country needs. Another puppet. Another polite, polished puppet.